it's not difficult because it actually unlocks the unlimited potential that Australia has. And if we're going to grow agriculture to $100 billion by 2030, we need to build dams. We need to build, obviously, the access roads and rail, and we're doing just that with the roads of strategic importance, $4.5 billion. The inland rail, $9.3 billion, and of course we've got $3.5 billion for grants and loans for the National Water Grid to, as part of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund. The National Water Grid formed in October. We want to build, we need to build, we must build dams.
Well, we must, because I mean, the thing that strikes me as a city bloke is how does a farmer say to the next generation things are going to be easier for them if we don't have reliable water, and we should have.
Add water, grow agriculture.
Add water, grow Australia, I'd have thought.
Oh, look, absolutely. And, you know, I've been banging on about this since my maiden speech back in 2010. And I have to say, when I used to go to capital cities and talk at small business forums and the like, and you'd start talking about water, their eyes would just glaze over. These days, I get nods in the room. Good. These days, I get pats in the back after bringing it up. And, you know, and we've got a good story to tell. Rookwood Weir, we've put $176.1 million on the table now. That's going to be about 70,000 megs. We hope. We're working with the Queensland government. No, I don't care what government, what political persuasion they are. I just want to build dams. And I'm really looking forward to excavators getting in the ground near Stanthorpe at Emu Swamp Dam. Look, it's only 12,000 megs. I've just got off the phone from Brent Finlay. He reckons they're ready to go some stage this year. Now, I think that will be the catalyst for more dam infrastructure to roll on after that. At the moment, sometimes it's hard to just get the paperwork, the engineering, the geometry, everything sort of set up and established. It's hard to just get that first dam built. They're happy to do it in Tassie. Scottsdale's coming online next month. And, of course, that's only days away, but that's not a big capacity, 8,000 megs. But I tell you what's going to make such a difference for northeast Tasmania. And if we get it done there, we should be able to do it on the mainland. So Emu Swamp, that's going to be the first. And then we've got, of course, Big Rocks, Hells Gate, Hewenden, McAllister. There's so many. Urana, Rookwood, and those ones I just mentioned are all in Queensland.
Yeah, and I mean, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating watching the paralysis, you know, the paperwork. As you're much more polite than I am about this. I mean, the states are really failing us.
It's bureaucratic madness. And, you know, I was so pleased that New South Wales came on board with Dungowan, near Tamworth, near the Peel River. And, you know, they've had a dam there since 1958. And we're 3.5 kilometres downstream. We're going to build another dam. And, of course, you add that to Wyangla Dam in and around Forbes-Cowra district in the Central West. That adds the equivalent of 1.2 Sydney harbours inland. So that builds climate resilience. It builds the potential to, you know, be future-proofed, ready for the next drought.
I think it also creates the possibility to kill off any city-country divide. If you get these big water projects going, you reckon people in the city had their eyes glazing over. You get real excitement in the suburbs if you start talking about these big nation-building projects. You do.
Oh, people talk about the city-country divide, though. I think if there was one thing that we really learnt from the terrible summer that we've had is that city people care about country people. That showed with the generosity that they were so willing to give when, of course, we had the terrible bushfires, which claimed so many lives. And, of course, they started in Queensland in September up near Yeppoon. And, of course, we're not finished the summer yet.
No, but summer's basically over tomorrow. We get the leap year day.
Yeah,
tomorrow,
but they reckon that the temperature's still going to be hot through March and April.
Summer's dragging on.
So I was up at Brookfield today, you know, with Julian Simmons, and they're still worried about the fire season. They're still prepared and they're still got their trucks all ready.
So when you see Infrastructure Australia come out and say the way to fix drought-proof, if you like, regional areas is to recycle water and send desal water out. I mean, come on, desal plants don't work. They're lying rotting in the ocean off the coast.
They cost a lot of money. Now, Infrastructure Australia has prepared that priority list, 147 projects. Yes, it does include desalination. I know they're talking about, I had a chat to a fellow today about the one that they're doing up at Kurnell in Sydney. Look, desal's one thing, but we're not responsible as a federal government for urban town water supplies. No. Yes, we have to do our part. We have to play our part. We do. But I'm looking at agriculture. I'm looking at growing these regional areas, because if there's one thing that we need to do, it is grow the capacity to drought-proof our nation. We've put $8 billion on the table. We've got a $100 million drawdown from 1 July this year for that future drought fund. But there's one way we can do it, and that's add water. Build the capacity to harness and harvest that water when it does fall for times when it is dry.
Well, this is good talk. This is important we hear these sorts of messages. The EPBC, the Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act, that's constantly being used as a cover for state governments to do nothing. I mean, the Queensland government won't even allow new quarrying.
Well, their
in
land
different
management
places.
laws are nuts. And, you know, if there's one thing that people in Queensland can do on October 31 is vote in the LNP and Deb Frecklington, because they will amend those laws and make sure that farmers have the capacity to do what they need to do on their own properties for the benefit of all Queensland and indeed Australia.
So Deb Frecklington's also in favour of a new Bradfield scheme, a modified Bradfield scheme. That is
It's
big
exciting
vision.
talk.
That's big vision.
Well, you've got to have blue sky vision, and Deb's got it. She's somebody who isn't frightened to talk about the water needs of Queensland. And look, at the end of the day, the Bradfield scheme, if it had have been in its purest form possible, they would have done it when he first thought of it and first came up with the idea in 1938. Not
the
long
war
after
got in the way, though.
Well, the war did get in the way, but he revised it in 1942. But if it didn't pass all the abilities to be able to be done then you know, they were never going to build it, because they didn't have the environmental and the cultural tick-offs that they needed to do then that they have now. But you know, and that was filling up Lake Eyre so that southeast New South Wales and Victoria could get rain, etc. But parts of the Bradfield scheme we're already doing with the big rocks and the Hell's Gate. That sort of water connectivity, that sort of building the capacity is already being done, and Deb has taken it the next step. So I'm hoping that after October 31 I can work with an LNP government in Queensland, because I think we'll get things done faster.
Hell's Gate gives you, what, 4 Sydney harbours worth of
Indeed.
water?
Yeah, there's
that's
a lot of
amazing
water. Well, they measure water in feet, not inches. I mean, back where I come from in Wagga Wagga, it's about 19 inches a year. I mean, they laugh at that in Queensland. That's what they get in a day.
We just had 2 metres of rain the last fortnight up in that part of the world.
And so that water, when it falls, needs to be stored, and it needs to be then utilised. And you know, we can do that. We can. I've heard of up at Hewenden, and Jane McNamara, the Mayor of Flinders Shire, is very excited about the prospects of getting a Mildura table grape grower up in her area to be able to take part when they get the Hewenden irrigation scheme and the dam built there, to take advantage of. They've got good soil. They just need to add the water or keep the water, and to be able to irrigate better than they can now.
So 2038 is 100 years since Bradfield sketched this scheme out. Can we have it done by then, do you reckon?
I think so. Well, you'll be still here doing your great show on Sky, and who knows what I'll be doing, but let's see what we can do. Well, it's only 2020, and I know it sounds a long way away, but you have to have a plan, you have to have a vision. That said, you know, this nonsense talk of being zero net emissions by this date or that date, Labor can't even decide what date it might be, 2030, 2035, and you've got 2050. I mean, it's nuts. It's the talk is nonsense. I mean, we need to talk about the here and now. We need to build water capacity and storage for the future, but we also need to make sure that our farmers can do what they do in a practical and pragmatic way, and not stymie them by talking about imposing more taxation on them. It's got to be when we talk emissions, it's got to be technology, not taxation.
Well, we're just going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk trains, planes, and automobiles, and a whole lot more with Deputy Prime Minister Michael McCormack. Let's talk about the zero emissions targets that the opposition have talked about. The reports out of the UK the last couple of days said that every plane would have to be grounded there in order to meet the Paris Agreement. So no airports will be allowed to be open.
I'm sure Gatwick and Heathrow will be, you know, the people who are running that airport will be through with that.
It's crazy stuff.
Oh, and look, a lot of these European countries, I mean, some of them are smaller than my electorate, and certainly smaller than, you know, the electorates that George Christensen and Michelle Landry and Ken O'Dowd and David Littleproud all represent. I mean, but they also, some of these countries don't produce a lot. We've got a huge resources mining sector. We've got a massive agricultural industry. Why would we want to place imposts in the way of those people who are doing a great job, not just for domestic supply, not just for our own nation, but others besides? So, I mean, they're growing the food and fibre. They're providing the energy needs of other nations. Why would we want to put a stymie in front of them?
Well, so why is the world telling us we have to? I mean, why is this pressure on us all the time that we've got to cut back on our emissions, we've got to change the way we do business in this country, stop digging coal out of the ground, stop flying planes?
We've got to look after the planet because we've only got one. We've got to do our fair share so that, you know, future generations can have an environment to enjoy just like we have. But we don't do it at the expense of jobs. We don't do it because we're virtue signalling. We don't do it because it makes us feel good about ourselves. if we cut all our resources and all our agriculture sectors today, which is what the Greens would want to have us do, it's not going to reduce the temperature by one iota, and that is just madness. And you look at an organisation like GetUp. I mean, they, yesterday I spent half an hour signing letters which were no doubt contrived by GetUp. People go on their website, pay a few dollars, get download these forms, send them off to me. I always write back to them. I always personally sign them, and dear Gary, dear Joan, whatever the case might be. And but the fact is, there's GetUp, an organisation which last year earned about $12 million and spent $7 million in wages. So it's not GetUp, it should be called Stitcher.
Yeah, no, good work if you can get it. Now let's talk about Inland Rail. The concept of a big nation-building plan been talked about for most of the last
since
1890.
years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, before Federation.
But people are angry about aspects of the route. Is ARTC doing the job you want? I mean, there's parts of west of Brisbane where going through floodplains affecting agribusinesses. What are you going to do there?
Star well, what we're going to do is we've actually got an expert international panel with the very best available science. We're going to be sitting down talking with those communities. We already have, and we already have largely gone through the route process and final alignments, but we'll continue to consult. It's continuing at a pace between Narromine and Parkes in New South Wales. Now there it's created hundreds upon hundreds of jobs, not just for small businesses, but for those communities. It is creating so many jobs, Indigenous jobs, local jobs for local small businesses. Yes, I understand there are concerns about the floodplain and all that sort of thing, but I've also put in place Warren Truss as the chairman of the project. Richard Wankmuller wouldn't get a more authoritative person, a more expert person to be the CEO of the project, and we will continue to negotiate, to talk with, consult, listen to those people like Wes Judd and Condamine and those people who are concerned. And yes, I get it, at either end there's also concerns about the hubs and how we do it at Acacia Ridge and et cetera, and getting into the Port of Brisbane, what we do there. I understand those concerns. Fact is, the two Labor governments, Victoria through Jacinta Allen, Queensland through Mark Bailey, would not have signed the intergovernmental agreements to have those projects signed off on. Of course, the New South Wales Liberal Nationals government did as well through John Barilaro. Wouldn't have signed it if they didn't know that the Inland Rail wasn't going to be beneficial for their states and didn't appreciate the fact that we would do the right thing.
So Inland Rail stacks up, but again, you're being sort of a bit stitched up by state governments in the fact that they tell you the corridor they want you to use. You've got no real say on where to go.
Oh, no, we have. And this has been a long, drawn-out process. There have been experts in engineering, in technical design work. We've got the best in the business. And no matter what you do in this nation, you're always going to have somebody who probably thinks, I'd prefer it to be there. Sure. This banana philosophy, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. If you can remember it, you can use it. It's not NIMBYism, it's actually the banana republic.
I like that.
And we have to build things. We have to do things. We have to make things. We have to create things. And that's what the Liberal and Nationals federal government is doing. And I'm pleased I've got a Prime Minister in Scott Morrison who actually believes in doing things and creating things and making things. And that's why we're developing our work skills through the Industry Minister, Karen Andrews. That's why David Littleproud, the Agriculture Minister, always talks about increasing our productive output, because more jobs means more trade. More trade equals better opportunities for regional Australia. And when our regions are strong, so too is our nation.
So is coronavirus going to hit the budget bottom line so a lot of this is delayed, or are you just simply going to back Australia and maybe borrow to build to make the future possible?
The coronavirus is going to have a real effect on the budget, on the nation going forward. We've been very forward-leaning in this. Before the World Health Organisation even pressed the red alert button, Greg Hunt, the Minister for Health, and the Prime Minister we were having meetings at a national security level. We were making sure that we did everything that we could to protect Australia, because that's the number one issue, making Australians be safe and feel safe. I have to give compliments to Qantas, Alan Joyce. They went into Wuhan. They rescued those people on the Diamond Princess. They had those mercy dashes and got the people back. Some went to Christmas Island. Some went to Howard Springs in the Northern Territory to make sure that they were quarantined, so that when they did come back to their families and their communities, they were over the virus. And we've had 15 in the initial, having the virus, having contracted it. 8 in the current lot, but none of them are serious. We're working through that. But it could well be a worldwide pandemic, and that is going to be such an economic boost, but never mind the health effects, and that's disastrous.
So 200 billion off the stock market in the last couple of weeks, that's the sort of numbers that, we're hearing, this huge amount of money that's come off the stock market.
The stock market is driven by fear, and I appreciate that. It's going to be an economic hit, there is no question. But what I would say to Australians is do not panic. The government, as best we can, we've got the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Brendan Murphy. You couldn't get a better person in that job. We've been very responsible thus far, and we will continue to monitor the situation. We've had face masks, at all airports. We've put them out into pharmacies and to doctors' surgeries, and the community should know that Australia has its best interests at heart, but we can't monitor or even control what other nations do as far as this is concerned, and so we can only protect our own borders. We'll do that to the very best of our abilities, and we are doing that.
So, building for the future, is that going to be delayed because of coronavirus? Does it actually have an impact on the sort of plans?
Well, I was talking to Warren Inch just yesterday, Gary, and this is a good point, because Gary, I've got to tell you, Warren told me that one of the road-making firms up around Cairns, because they couldn't get their inputs, they couldn't get their parts for their heavy vehicles and excavators and what like, and even some of their asphalt and whatnot, they couldn't actually get all of that in from China, and the elements that they needed to be able to build roads, and they've actually had to put stand-down workers. So, we're already seeing some of that, and of course the tourism industry has been hard hit, not just by the bushfires, but indeed by the slowdown. And I know even in Geraldton, I was there the other day talking to fishers there, crayfishers. They're millions of dollars worth of lobsters cannot be sent to the lunar celebrations for the New Year celebrations in China, and that opportunity is now lost. So this is going to have an impact, there's no question. The Reserve Bank Governor, Dr. Philip Lowe, has already said it's going to have a big impact on the bottom line. Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer, knows that. But as a responsible government, which knows how to manage money, we'll be doing our best to ensure that the economy still continues, and what we don't want to see is fear and panic, because that's the last thing we need.
Great way of avoiding any budget leak. Well done, Deputy Prime Minister. Good to have you on the program.
Great
Thanks for your
speaking,
time.
Gary. Thank you.